Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Down to the Wire. This is episode 9. I'm the breadstick, and I'm back with the shark. And today we are hosting our very first own guest episode, and we have none other than one of our good friends and former pastor, Pastor Colby. Welcome to the podcast. Tell us a little about yourself and your knowledge of basketball and your favorite team.
Oh yeah, man. Hey, it's good to be here. I'm proud of you guys. This is rad. Um, yeah, I became a big NBA fan as a teenager, reconnecting with my birth father when I moved back to Salt Lake City from California, and started watching the Jazz in their heyday, and kind of one of the golden ages of the NBA. Getting to go to games with him and seeing guys like Magic and Bird and Jordan and Ewing and Barkley, and getting to see kind of the rise and then the fade of the Malone Stockton era. So I love hoops. I love the NBA. I'm a big fan. I love living in Dallas now and seeing what the Mavericks are doing. It's a lot of fun. Got a lot of love for the Warriors on the West Coast. They're my Cali team, and yeah, man, I love hoops.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
All right, so Dalton, you want to take it away with your first question?
Oh yeah, of course. So Kobe, first off, so I was looking at the NBA standings earlier
Huh?
today, and the Jazz, I believe, are third
Yep.
seed. So I mean, kudos to them.
Yep.
And so my question is like, how are they gonna like maintain
Hmm.
that and like clinch the division
Yeah.
for the first
Yeah.
while?
If I'm real, I think it's definitely a two car race in the Northwest, or with their division between Denver and with Utah. And Denver's very, very good. I'm not going to say anything negative about Denver. They're very, very good. They're strong. They're deep. Um, I think Utah's key is actually going to be just staying healthy. I think that's going to be the key for them. Bogdanovich was out the playoffs last year. I'm thoroughly convinced that the Jazz would have gone deep into the playoffs if Bogdanovich had been healthy. They went right to the wire with a very, very good Denver Nuggets team that if Conley shot had rolled the other way, there's a good chance that the Jazz would have been in the Western Conference Finals with the Lakers. I'm very convinced of that. I think they need to play healthy. I think they need to play good team ball. I think Favors coming back has helped their defensive interior a lot because they lost a lot defensively last year. And I think that if Mitchell's shot is still off, he's still not consistent with his shot. Mitchell's got to get his shot back. I think his shot attempts per game need to hover. I would prefer them to be always under like 21 if I'm real, because I think he's got enough other guys around him like Clarkson and Ingles when he comes back healthy, and Conley's playing great ball. I think this is the Mike Conley that the Jazz traded away so much for. We're finally getting to see him play. So if the real Mike Conley will still step up and run the team well, if Mitchell can just shoot smart and they can play defense cohesively and then get the extra help from those guys, I think the Jazz could go deep. I think the Jazz could do some great things this year. I really do.
I like it a lot. I like it a lot. Good
Yeah.
answer.
All right.
Thanks, man.
So I heard you say something about how it's always gonna be it's kind of between Denver and the Jazz for that first spot in their division.
Yeah.
What do you think about Denver and their slow start to this season so far?
Mhm. Yeah, I think Denver's definitely missing some key players that helped them go deep in the playoffs last year. But you got to remember that Michael Porter's out hurt right now, and I really think that Murray's the real deal. I think Murray's a real deal, and I think the Joker is the real deal too. I mean, he could just does so many things well. I think health is going to be key for them. I think they're well coached. I think it's going to be like anything else. I think certain teams match up better with other teams than others. I think part of it's going to be health on the court. I think part of it's going to be health off the court. If these guys get hit with COVID, that's the X factor right now. I think for a lot of teams that they're going to have to figure out. I think health has a lot to do with their slow start and reintegrating some new faces, because I think they lost three key pieces to free agency in the offseason. But I still think they're strong. I still think they have a strong 8-9 man rotation that they can hold their own against almost anybody in the West. Good question though, Gabe.
Yeah. Well said. I honestly love the Denver Nuggets myself ever since there was this play where Jamal Murray crossed up Steven Adams and hit a step
Yep.
back on him, and it was hilarious
Yep.
to watch. Um,
Yep.
I love Jamal Murray. I love everything about him. Now, with the Jazz being a third seed right now, and with Donovan Mitchell being basically the front running man, even though he hasn't been hitting his shots well. Who would you
Right.
compare? Who would your NBA comparison be? Because I get a lot of Dwayne Wade's,
Uh-huh.
but I haven't really seen it much lately.
Yeah, I think Dwayne Wade is still the one that really comes up to me. I'm gonna go old school on you and say the only other guy that reminds me a little bit of is there's elements of his game that remind me of prime Monte Ellis. Do you remember Monte Ellis that used to play in Cleveland?
Yeah, I think
Like,
I see that more than Dwayne
Yeah.
Wade as of right
yeah,
now.
there's some comparisons there. But I think the reason that a lot of people compare Mitchell to D Wade is because he is an undersized two, but he's got a strong Euro step. He was one of the first American players. D Wade was one of the first American players to really incorporate a strong Euro step into his game, and I think Mitchell has patterned a lot of his game after D Wade. And so I think that's part of it. He's an inside outside threat, and he's so quick. He's so fast, and that's why if you remember right, Shaq started calling him Flash when he teamed up with him for that first championship run against your Mavericks, Shark. And that's why so his quicks, his shot inside and outside, and his defense. I think defensively he might be stronger than D Wade. I mean, I have much respect for D Wade, but I think Mitchell might actually be a stronger defender at this stage in his career than D Wade was.
Definitely, well said.
Yeah.
So let's move. So we're gonna move on from the Jazz, and we want to actually talk about something recently, and we want to get your opinion on it.
Okay.
So the James Harden trade recently just
Yeah.
happened, and they played a couple games recently, and it doesn't look like that they're doing too bad, but they don't
Oh,
have Kyrie. So what do you think is their key to staying healthy and to go far in the playoffs? And do you think if Kyrie does come back, do you think it will work out?
yeah. Well, number one, I think the Bucks have shown that they're very vulnerable in the playoffs. I don't know what their deal is, but I think they're vulnerable in the playoffs. And so, right, so I feel like you've asked me a couple of questions. I think you've asked me, how do I think their team chemistry is going to be? And I think you've asked me, how do I feel like they're going to go in the playoffs? And so I'll start with playoffs and then I'll go team chemistry. These guys are trained professionals, and they are three of probably the top, I'll politely say they're three of the top 8 guys, is what I'll politely say. Um, yeah, sorry about that beep, guys. If that's me, I don't know if it is or not, but I'm sorry if it is.
It's all cool.
But I think they'll be able to figure it out, especially in the East. I think the East is ripe to be picked. I think the Celtics are strong. I think the Bucks are strong. I think Miami could make noise. But at the end of the day, I think in the playoffs, you see teams' rotations shorten. You see the game called differently, especially for superstars. And I see the Nets going deep into the playoffs. I see them potentially struggling during the regular season. I'm sure that Nash is going to rest those guys left and right. It wouldn't surprise me to see them go into the playoffs in one of those middling playoff spots, like a 4-5, because they end up resting guys a lot this year, and they end up taking advantage of the time. Team chemistry wise, my knee jerk reaction is there's not enough basketballs for them. I mean, that's my knee jerk reaction. If we played some unique youth group version of basketball where we had 2 or 3 basketballs, I think that team would beat everybody. But there's only one ball; it can only be in the hands of one player, and I think all 3 of those guys are used to having the ball in their hands and running some isolation stuff where they create stuff for themselves, and then things are created out of what they do for other guys. KD did a great job of changing his game for Golden State. Um, I don't know if Harden can do that. He played 8 years as the man in Houston, and I don't know. I don't know what I haven't seen. We're going to find out whether or not he really means what he says, that he really wants to win. We're going to find out if he really means it or not. And I don't know where Kyrie's head is right now. I don't know that Kyrie knows where Kyrie's head is right now. And that's the other one that I don't know. So team chemistry wise, their best bet is they really need to pick up some really great guys off the waiver wire that have gotten bought out. And if they could add 2 or 3 really good guys, kind of like with what Miami was able to do with like an Andre Iguodala last year, I think they could give the Lakers a problem in the finals. But they're gonna have to figure that out. Their chemistry is gonna be a challenge.
No, yeah, definitely. I think just the biggest, what I said in our past episode about the Harden trade, that team chemistry is going to be the biggest issue for them if they can't figure out how to play well together. But also that there's no depth. There's no depth to that lineup and to that bench after you hit that starting five. There's nothing there. They traded everything away. I think their best asset is Spencer Dinwiddie, who is out for the season. So they have nothing there, and I think that's what really separates them from the rest of the league, is because if they don't have anybody that can take it on the floor, that while all three of them are sitting on the bench, then that's going to be an issue.
Right. And I couldn't agree more. But I mean, you look at what's happening in Cleveland right now with Porter. You have a highly talented player who's probably dealing with a lot of pressures of COVID and frustration of the fact he plays for a crappy team, and that guy's going to be able to be found on the cheap. And I'm telling you that if Brooklyn took a chance on him, really similar, man, who's the backup guy to Curry that the Warriors took a chance on that was so hurt? Gabe, I space his name.
How recent was it?
Sean Livingston.
Oh,
Sean
yeah.
Livingston. So I mean, the way the Warriors took a chance on Livingston, I could see Brooklyn taking a chance on Porter. And I'm telling you, all these underperforming teams with frustrated talent, they're going to start hitting the contract buyouts and the waiver wires and things like that. And Brooklyn's going to pick up 2 or 3 really great guys for nothing. You watch. That's what's going to help them. And in the playoffs, again, you see teams tighten up their rotation, where there are some teams. It wouldn't surprise me to see Brooklyn only rotate through 8 players in the playoffs. It wouldn't surprise me. And given within those 8 players, you have 3 of the top 8 players in the NBA at any given time, which means 2 of the top 8 players at any given time are on the floor for you as contributors. They're going to do okay in the playoffs if they can stay healthy.
No, yeah, I definitely agree, but I also just think it's gonna come down to their team chemistry if they don't know how to, if they don't, because I feel like I feel like that teams, especially in the playoffs, they play either 2 ways in the last 5 minutes of games. They either have someone who can isolate, or they run the pick and roll.
Right.
But you have 3 guys who can isolate, and they're all gonna. And if they can't figure it out, they're all gonna want the ball in their hands. And then after the game, whoever gets it, whoever doesn't get it, is gonna argue with the other 2.
Right.
And I just think that if they don't figure that out, then that's gonna be an issue coming down in the next few years. And Kyrie, like Stephen A. said, Kyrie should maybe even retire if he's not playing basketball.
Crazy.
It was crazy, but I could see where he wasn't going wrong. Like, if he's not loving the game of basketball, he has what he has. He has a ring, a bunch of all-stars. He's got a bunch of money.
Yep.
I don't see why not.
Yep. No, you're not wrong. I think short hot take is, I think Brooklyn's going to figure it out. I think they're going to go deep in the playoffs. I just wonder how long they can keep it together, because I do think you're dealing with some pretty big personalities in a pretty small locker room without a lot of support.
No, yes, definitely. If they can figure it out, though. I don't know if they will be able to figure it out, but if they can, they will be phenomenal.
Absolutely. Yep.
Because from my expectations for them is that they need to make they need to make the finals. If you have literally 3 of like the top 15 players in the league and you don't make the finals, then that's one of the biggest busts in NBA history.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it reminds me a little bit of what Houston tried to do in the mid to late 90s. But they had guys that were past their prime, and I don't think any of these 3 guys are past their prime.
No, I think all 3 of these guys are definitely in their prime right now.
And with what Houston did back then, they brought in Pippen, they brought in Barkley, but those guys were on the other side of their curve. They were.
Yeah.
I can see that. And Colby, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So you mentioned COVID, like how everything's slowing down.
Yeah.
And so you have you're seeing games like being postponed and all that. Do you think that's smart to postpone games, or do you think it's just better to downright cancel them?
I think you do one with the backup plan that you might have to do the other. I think that for now you postpone, and then you see how many games are going to have to be postponed, and then as you start to look later into the year, You look at travel. You look at the contraction of the virus in certain areas, and I think you look at the playoff picture. And then you have to be mindful about some of those kinds of things, because some of those games might be crucial in deciding playoff spots or even who gets in. And so I think you have to be open-minded with it. I think right now they're doing the right thing by saying postpone and not cancel. But I think the more games you see postponed, I think they're going to have to cancel some of them. I don't see any way around it. It's just it's starting to happen too frequently, and too many of these players aren't adhering to the rules with it. And these guys have so much money, they don't care about being fined. I mean, I saw that Kyrie had been fined 50 grand for breaking the rules and another 80 grand per game or whatever it is. I mean, this guy's got more money than he'll ever spend. He doesn't care about money. So, yeah. But it could get interesting in the playoff picture. It could.
No, yeah, definitely. I think this season and last season are like probably going to be the most interesting, and how many other seasons that come to if this doesn't get ended with quick. I'm actually gonna move on from this topic. I saw this thing. So there's a lot, Colby. We do a lot of talking off camera about the Warriors and just their last 5 years as a dynasty.
Yeah.
There's a lot that we can unpack, but we're gonna try to keep it as short as possible. But the main things I want to look at is the 2015 championship and the 2016 championship and the 2019 championship. So there's three championships. So the first one, the Cavs and the Warriors met up for the first time, but Kyrie and Kevin Love did go down with injuries, and the Warriors were able to pull it out in 6. A lot of people say that there's a big asterisk next to that championship. Do you think that if both of the Cavs players were healthy, they would have beaten the Warriors?
No, you got to be able to beat them 4 times, and I think at the end of the day, I don't think that Cavaliers team had the horses to beat that Warriors team 4 times. Not with the career years that Green and Clay were having and the supporting cast that they had. And if I remember right, the Warriors weren't 100% healthy either. Who did the Warriors have out in that series?
I can't remember.
Is that the series that Bogut went down?
No, that was the one afterwards.
Oh, okay. But I think the Warriors were that dominant. I think the West was that tough that year. It was so much different than the East. I think the Warriors had way too many weapons, and I don't think the Cavaliers had the ability to stop them. I just don't. I really, really don't. I mean, that was the year Iguodala was the MVP, and Iguodala wasn't even the best player on the team.
Yeah, that's definitely very controversial in some people's eyes. Some people think, I think mostly he won it because of his defense on LeBron, just to be able to stop him from getting the 4 games he got, or the 2 games that he, or how many games you need to win. But
Right.
But no, he's definitely not the best player on that team, and that's coming from a Warriors fan. Like he's great. He was a great asset for the team.
100%. But that's why I think that team was so much better than them. Is that the second or third best player on that team was the one that won MVP. That tells you how great that team was, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So moving on to the 2016 NBA Finals, a lot of people look at it as just a 3-1 loss or deficit that the Cavs were down and came back, which is still phenomenal. But what I look at it as is that a lot of people don't look at it as that. I think it was one of the most, not necessarily rigged finals, but like you could kind of see the NBA was swaying it towards LeBron's side just for ratings, because having headlines say 3-1 deficit, first Cleveland championship in how many ever years, I think that would have helped it. And there was a bunch of other factors. Draymond going down for Game 5 with the suspension. Bogut going down in Game 5. Curry not being 100% because he was having injuries towards the early parts of the playoffs, and they kind of rushed him back for the Portland Trail Blazers. Coming off of a heavy 3-1 deficit to the OKC Thunder before coming to play the Cavs, so they were not as well rested as the Cavs were. What are your takes on this series?
One of the things that I love about sports, but I think basketball shows it particularly well because of the nature of the way the game's played, is that it's a game of momentum. And I think that the Warriors were at the wrong spot of momentum, and the Cavaliers were at the right spot of momentum. That's what I think. I think almost like the same way that if you push someone really hard on a swing, where they'll stay going without moving their legs really well from a really hard push, but eventually they go still because they can coast a little bit. I think that's what the Warriors did. I think they had a lot of adrenaline coming out of that physical, tough playoff series with OKC. And I think they coasted in and were able to kind of build on that. But when they fell hard. I think, though, if I'm candid with you, I think the Warriors beat themselves in that series. I do not think the Cavaliers beat the Warriors. I still do not believe that they were the better team. I do not. I think that the East was so pathetically weak that year, and the West was so ridiculously hard that I think that it was one of those moments in sports where one team had momentum and the other one lost theirs, and the two crashed into each other, and the Warriors couldn't do anything right. And then when Draymond couldn't get his head in the game, my man just lost it, and that hurt because he was a lot of the passion and fire and adrenaline for them, and I think that took the wind out of their sails. That's also the series that Bogut went down hurt, if I remember right.
Yes.
And I don't think that did him any favors either. But no, I think that had to do with momentum and Cleveland peaking at the right time, and Golden State running out of gas because of a very physical, very challenging playoff series leading up to it. And I don't think Cleveland was challenged that much that year. I really don't. I think they came in pretty fresh.
No, yeah, they played the Pistons, then they played the Raptors, and then they played the Heat. So the only team that I think
none
maybe
of those teams keep anybody awake at night back then. No, none of them did.
The only team that I could really see quote unquote making a run for the Cavs was the Raptors at that point. But with Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan, they really couldn't do much out of the playoffs.
Because that's all they had. It was before they brought in Gasol and other guys to help them. They were a two-man team really in a lot of ways.
No, definitely. I also just look at that year, like, because everybody says 73-9 and no ring, but like you were one game away from a ring, so I don't think you can really like even look at that way.
Yeah, but just to play devil's advocate for a moment, you look at some of these things these other great coaches have done, like Popovich, where they rest key guys for key games.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really cool they got the 73-9 record, but if they had rested guys more, would they have had more energy going into the playoffs? And with all due respect to Steve Kerr, I think the man's brilliant. I think he's a good dude. But just honest question, if he'd rested guys more and not been as worried about beating that single season win record, would they have had more juice going into the playoffs? It's an honest question.
No, yeah, I honestly don't know. But even like if we did rest players, I think there was still kind of a good chance that they could have pulled out the 73-9 because that bench had a lot of depth to it.
Yep.
A lot of good leadership on that bench too. So I think there's a good chance that they could have done it, but I don't know. That's a big what if question because it didn't happen. Sure. So, all right. So we're gonna move on to the last finals that could potentially have an asterisk next to it, which is the 2019 finals. The Warriors were coming off with a bunch of injuries. Steph, his finger, Clay, his ankle at the time, Durant, his calf. DeMarcus Cousins has had injuries the rest of his career. Career.
Yep.
Then you have two players go down. DeMarcus Cousins can't play like himself because he's frustrated because he's injured. Curry's injured.
Yep.
That Warriors team is just tired. They pushed it 5 years long. What do you think was the biggest difference in that series?
I just think, if I'm real, man, I just think they flat out ran out of gas. They ran out of horses. They ran out of gas. I mean, when they went after Durant, they sacrificed a lot of that depth of their bench that they had previously. They also had to look at the fact that, you have a guy like Klay Thompson go down hurt, man. Klay Thompson. And I mean, he is, hey, here's a spicy take. He might be the second or third best two-way threat in the NBA when healthy.
I agree.
And he goes down hurt. Kevin Durant goes down hurt. Curry struggles through being hurt. and then you have a Toronto Raptors team that has gone all in. They have mortgaged their future. They have sacrificed. They've shipped guys that they love to go all in to win now. And God bless them, they went all in against the Warriors. They fought. And if you remember right, that Raptors team was a Kawhi Leonard 3-point shot falling in or out away from potentially not being in the NBA Finals anyway. And so they fought hard. They did. They fought hard. I think it'll always, to me, it's an asterisk finals because of most of the Warriors lineup having difficulty being on the floor together. But that's speaking as somebody with a tender spot for the Warriors. So I don't know.
No, yeah, I'm always gonna think that or think stuff like that with the Warriors, and just
Yeah.
because Colby, Dalton, I'm a heavy hitting Warriors team. And the
Yeah.
only way, I told Dalton this, the only way I was going to leave the Warriors and go to a completely different team was if they drafted LaMelo Ball, because I thought that was going to be the worst draft pick for us in the last 10 years, if that happened. Because we have Curry and Clay, so there's no point in drafting another guard that's going to be on the bench, even though he is on the bench right now. But I think we haven't had a good, decent center since Bogut. The good Bogut, not the 2019 Bogut, because he played for the Warriors in 2019 a little bit.
Right.
But yeah, I was like, we got to get a center, and that's what we did. And I think even though this year is like a little scuffed because Clay did get injured again, that we'll make the playoffs. We'll make like the second round. I'll be surprised if we make the conference finals just because of how good the West is. But once we get Clay, we'll be back in contention. I
agree.
I think there's just a lot of other teams that everybody has to focus on, and the Warriors will be the sleeper in the next like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. I hope you're right.
All right, so that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank Colby for coming out and just talking some basketball with us. We kind of ran out of time. We have a lot of other topics we could talk about, but maybe we'll save that for a future episode where we can have him come back and talk more.
I'd love that.
Make sure you check our socials in the description below, as well as my other 2 YouTube channels. And that will be it for this episode of Down to the Wire. We'll see you later. Peace.